This week on Spooky Coop, episode 22, we bring you the story of a man's sighting of strange lights over the White House in Washington, D.C. during a vacation with his parents when he was a young boy back in 1952. As you will hear, these were no ordinary lights, but rather brilliant orbs that moved in a manner that can only be described as intelligently controlled. Hi everyone, I'm Paul.
And I'm Michelle.
And you're in
The
Spooky Coop.
Welcome to the Spooky Coop. Hope you're not chicken.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we're live, Michelle.
Are we live?
We're live.
We're hot?
We're hot.
Well, you're hot.
Ew, boy, thank
People
you.
should see them.
No, please don't. That's why we're doing podcasts. I don't
Oh,
want
we're
to.
going to be on YouTube soon.
Oh, dear.
We just got to figure out how to...
You know the wig with the microphone idea? I think I need that.
I'm still working on the sock puppets.
Okay. Welcome, everybody,
Hi.
and welcome to the Spooky Coop. This is episode 22.
22.
22, yes. And we got a good story today. So
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we do.
we do. It is about the 1952 UFO flap in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, for people who don't know what a flap is, I think it's the back of your underpants or something when you're in one of those long john suits.
Yeah, UFO flap.
Whoa, we're aging ourselves.
I would imagine most people who are interested in UFOs. You're making this very difficult for me. I'm trying to be sort of professional
Hey,
here.
I'm brain dead.
Yes, for those of you who
It's
don't know,
a group of UFOs. Like if people see a bunch of UFOs flying together, it's like, they used to call them a long, long time ago, before I was born, they used to call them UFOs. The military called them pancakes instead of saucers. So if you saw a bunch of them, they used to say that was a flap, like flapjacks. Okay, so that's where it came from.
Yeah, and so in 1952 there was a flap where there was a number of UFOs. They had radar sightings and what do you call it when you register a radar sighting? Blips on the radar. Thank you. Yes. So there was actual data that they could go by. They never said exactly what they were, of course, and that they were just anomalies. I think they called one of them temperature inversion.
Sunshine off the bottom, swamp gas off the bottom of geese.
Swamp gas off the bottom of geese. Yeah.
Hey, I thought it was really cool that this week we got 2 submissions from older people who are talking about things that happened in their childhood.
Right, which is a good segue for our friend here, who from Philadelphia.
Yeah, he called himself Arthur.
Arthur, yeah.
We don't know his real name.
Yeah, he said if we wanted to refer to him, we could call him Arthur Greenwood. It's not his real name. He's 82 years old.
Yeah,
and this
way older than us.
Yeah. This happened when he was 10 years old in 1952, when he was on vacation.
Before either of us were born.
Many of us listening today. And in 1952, his mother and he went on vacation to Washington, D.C., and I guess a couple of other cities along the coast, but they stopped for several days in July of 1952. And they were, the parents, when they arrived, I guess they arrived later in the day, and they decided they were going to go out driving that night when the traffic was not so busy. And he said he remembered it being dark. The sun had gone down.
That happens at night.
It does, yes. And he said the buildings, they went out, the buildings were illuminated, and, he was really excited at 10 years old to go and see the Capitol building and things he'd only seen in books. For those of you unaware, there were no cell phones back then. There was no internet or anything like that.
And there were things called books.
Things called books that we had to read, and some of them, the ones with pictures, especially colored pictures. Mind you, when I remember reading about this flap, and there were pictures of lights over the White House that somebody actually got.
There were videos online.
And
check it out.
There were videos online.
Yeah.
Why have I not seen those yet?
Oh, I don't know.
Too busy
because
doing
you're
research.
Reading books.
I'm reading books. So, anyway, as they're driving around, they're driving down, and his father, as they're coming down towards past the museums, his mother notices there's some bright lights off to the right of the ellipse down at the end of the street. I think it's Constitution Avenue that they were driving down.
Uh-huh.
And as they're driving down, she noted, well, look at all the spotlights. It'll be great to see the White House. They pull down. His father pulls around the ellipse. And, there's not many people there. He finds a parking spot relatively close, and they get out, and his father says, they turned off the spotlights, it looks like. But, there's still enough light on the building they could go over and see. And there was people there. Yeah. There were people standing in front of it. And he said Arthur said he remembered as they walked up that there were people, there was commotion going on. They were pointing over, not just at the White House, but above the White House. Uh-huh. And, excuse me. And as they walked up, they were standing there, they were looking at it. And, he was 10 years old, so he was, enamored with what he was seeing, actually seeing the White House for the first time in his life. Yeah. Then something happened that he said he never has ever forgotten. All of a sudden, somewhere between 6 and 10, he didn't know the exact number, but all these brilliant orange lights appeared over top of the White House in a circular or oval type of formation. Wow. And as
that part they didn't catch on the film, so they must have started late, but that's amazing.
I'm going to get to that part of it. They, his parents remarked that, they turned the spotlights back on, and and the crowd, there was this sort of whoa going on, and as they looked, Arthur said he was looking, and it was confusing. He couldn't see what the spotlights were attached to. Yeah. When you're that age, you're going to listen to the adults, and they're painting one reality, and your eyes are registering another one. Right. Then, all of a sudden, he said the lights started to rotate in the circular or oval fashion. And he said they didn't just slowly start to move. They went from a standstill to immediately moving very quick, all in a circle, going around. And everybody, there was this confusion and he said all of a sudden everything got really, really quiet. Wow. And he said he felt this peace come over him, this like he said he's never felt it since then. Really? This inner calm. And he said it lasted it seemed like forever, but it was probably less than a minute, seeing these lights go around. Yeah. Then as quickly as they started, they stopped. They didn't slow down to a stop. They were moving quickly and came to a dead stop. Wow. And he said
maybe that is on film somewhere. Go ahead.
Yeah, he said it was
the internet's huge.
Utterly confusing. It was very disorienting for everyone. Yeah. Then he said the lights, these orange orb-like lights, they all rose together in unison, and they started to go up into the sky, but not very far. And there was this strange feeling of tension and wonder and awe and everything. And all of a sudden, all the lights together shot off to the right. They shot off in a streak. They were so fast that they were gone from sight within a second. Wow. And everybody was like, whoa. Wow.
I wonder if that's the second flap. I know that there were two flaps over the White House. I only know about the first one. That's probably the second one.
I don't know. Yeah.
Same year. Like they were a couple of weeks apart.
Then the next thing that happened. This isn't the end of it yet.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
This isn't the end. And remember, this is all happened within a minute. Okay? Wow. It is an incredible thing everybody has experienced in probably under 60...
I wish I had opened that letter.
220 seconds. Then they started to hear the sound of jets. And they could see the lights of the jets flying over top. And he said they were thunderous. So afterwards, he could only think that, those were military jets. When people are pointing, and as these incredibly loud jets, this formation pass over, then he couldn't remember how long, but they heard several sonic booms. Really? So these jets were moving over 768 miles an hour. Wow. Or 68 plus.
So that's absolutely amazing. That's wow.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. My chair's squeaking.
Oh, I know. The excitement is just... So I'm checking my cheat sheets here. So they, after that they figured the show was over. And then, strange enough, everybody, or maybe not so strange, because this happens a lot after people have seen something unusual.
Right.
His father, he said, didn't remember it the same way. And his mother, she explained it as being helicopters that they saw over the White House.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And he also pointed out that immediately after he said he remembered people running toward the White House on the lawn in front of him. And there was some type of activity and commotion. And people, the sense of calm left very, very quickly. And people started talking in an excited fashion. People were trying to explain what they had seen, and he said after that, for quite some time, for the rest of their lives until they passed, I guess, he said his mother said that his father didn't remember it correctly, because he talked about these spotlights and this setup that they had, and it just escaped him as to what he actually saw. And you write something that happens that quick, they write up very quickly, and his mother would always say, no, you are mistaken.
Right.
Those were helicopters. How can you forget that? Right? And they, omitting the other parts, almost like they had forgotten chunks of it.
Yeah.
Right? So anyway, they drive back to the hotel after. His father says, okay, let's go back now. And then, they take off,
finish their trip.
Finish their little trip, drive around the Pentagon, back to the hotel room. He gets back from vacation. This story is still not over. He gets back from vacation, and he couldn't remember how long it was, but it was summer vacation still, and he was riding his bike. He said it was probably within the first couple of weeks that he got back. He was riding his bike around, and on his street is this big black car, and these two Caucasian men standing outside of the car dressed in suits. And, one of them calls over to him as he rides by and goes, "Hey, Arthur." And Arthur's like, he looks at them, he stops, and he's confused. He's never seen them before, doesn't know who they are, and stops. He said, back then things were very different. When an adult, you listen to adults, especially very officious looking, people who looked, like a banker or a police officer or anything like that. He stopped and they said to him, how was your vacation? And he in his 10-year-old mind, he's trying to figure out, what's going on. And he says it was fine. Who were, basically inquiring who they are. And they proceed to start to unnervingly terrify his 10-year-old mind. They ask him if he saw anything on his vacation. Anything unusual, particularly over the White House. And he nodded. He said he nodded, and he said, there's something that you saw. Did you see the airplanes? And he said, yeah. And they said, we need you to keep a very important secret. And he said, those planes you saw, those were top secret aircraft. No one's supposed to know about them. And they said, you have to keep it a secret. If you don't keep it a secret, we'll find out. You can't tell anyone. Do you promise? And he nodded his head, and they pushed him. They pressed him. They said, Arthur, we need to hear you say that you promise not to talk about this. And he said, yeah, okay, I promise. And then they still pressed him further. They said, you can't talk about it to your friends at school, nobody at all. If you do, we'll find out. And, if this gets out, your parents could get in a lot of trouble with the police. So don't tell anyone. And he said the voice of this guy, of these two men, they were talking back and forth to him. They became more and more menacing and intimidating. And he's a 10-year-old boy on a bike. And he said they were like mountains of men, these big guys. And he said, okay, I promise. And before, they didn't even say goodbye or anything. He said they just turned around, got in their car. They looked at each other or something, and they turned around, got in their car, and they drove off. And he said he never spoke about it to anyone, and for decades. And as he got older, it became more and more, he had much more important things going on in his life later on. As he got into his 20s, his career, and he never spoke about it. But this, he said after seeing the Tic Tac video,
the one that
the
with
Air
the-
Force,
yeah,
the Air
the one
Force
that was
video and
released
how they were
recently.
talking about it. He started thinking about it more, and it was weighing on him more, and he thought that it was an important thing that he wanted to share because he's 82. He sees he's got an expiration date. So
Don't we all?
yeah. So he said he felt
Used by.
yeah. He felt that this was just too important to keep from the public.
Right.
That it was wrong for them to do this. And he ended his note, and I'm going to just
hang on.
read the words.
What did he say?
Here, he said, I can only imagine what the government was doing if they felt it was so important to intimidate and terrify a young child from talking about what he'd seen. I mean,
Yeah.
that is a very moving final statement, final
Yeah.
ending to his letter here.
It's almost like Men in Black stories. It reminds me, when I was the editor of Contact Forum magazine way back in the day, we used to get a lot of submissions about Men in Black. Of course, that was in the heyday of the late 80s and through the early 90s when abductions were rampant. And a lot of people who were abducted later would have Men in Black visits and stories.
Right.
And it was a lot like that, only more less, more intimidating. Of course, he was a child. He probably didn't feel the intimidation as intense, or doesn't remember it as intensely.
Right.
But,
And he never even inferred they were dressed in black or anything like that.
Oh, he said they were in suits.
In suits, yeah. But the whole Men in Black thing, that's something we could go into in a lot more detail in an entire episode.
If I can go back in some of my notes and pull out some of the stories. The Men in Black thing from that I had tons and tons from the Contact Forum days.
Yeah, I have several stories from myself from your own experience. From my own experience before we met. People who I'd talked to who had experiences with this in the groups that I worked with in Canada, and some of them don't wear black anymore. Surprise!
Yeah.
They actually, but they can be very intimidating.
Right.
They'll do things that are not considered socially normal. They'll just walk into your space and ask you what you're doing if you're looking at lights over the lake or over some part of a city.
Right. Or they look very abnormal. Let's just say they look. They say that there's this effect. I forget the name of it with AI, where you're looking. I'll look up the name of it, and we'll talk about it next time. But where a person, that they're AI because they look perfectly human, but there's something off, so they give you a freak factor. That's what these people have.
Right. Well, the ones that I encountered were perfectly human. They were probably almost certainly government people of some kind, because they just walked into our space and spoke in a very demeaning manner towards what are you looking at?
Too.
And one of the people said, we're watching these lights over the lake over here, and they went on to speak more intimately. So you're just light jockeys.
Yeah.
You want to get yourselves in the newspaper. And the person they were talking to, they just said, "Yeah, I like that word, light jockeys." Yeah.
Yeah, I remember.
Meanwhile, there's another guy in a suit filming all of this.
Right.
30 feet off to us on the lakeshore.
Right. We've seen stuff like that too.
Yeah.
You and I have experienced things like
Yes.
that and even when we've taken groups out. But then something else in that story came up. Something else in that story came up was the idea of his father saying it was just searchlights or whatever had some kind of light, and his mother saying it's helicopters. We see this a lot in people who see UFOs. It's somebody else's problem syndrome. It's like if a person is aware of UFOs or is open to UFOs, they see the actual UFO.
Yeah.
And other people sometimes don't even see anything there. They could look up and there could be a UFO as bright as the sun in the sky, and somebody else will look up and not even see anything.
Right.
And we've seen that ourselves. Remember we were at what was it, Hampton Beach?
Yes.
And we were sitting up on a hill in Hampton Beach, and we were watching these lights come in. These big pink lights would shine across the sky.
And then come in and fly at the same altitude.
Yeah, fly at the same altitude, and then just disappear into the water.
Right.
One after the other, just disappearing into the water. And like, sometimes people would stop and say, "Oh my God, look at that!" And then other people come by and it'd be happening, and they'd be like, "What are you looking at?" And we'd say, "Look at that! We'd say, "Look at that! See the pink thing going into the water?"
Yeah.
And they'd be like, "What pink thing?
Yeah.
I don't see it." Other people would be like, "Oh my God!" And you'd see this pink thing.
I remember one older couple saying, "We've lived here for years. We've never noticed that before."
We've never noticed that. And you could see these big pink
Harold,
lights.
look at that.
And they'd come right to the water.
Right.
You'd see the pink reflection as it goes right down into the water. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Other time that we went there the next week with filming equipment, it wasn't there.
Yeah, of course, no.
Of course,
it's always when you're not prepared.
Oops, sorry. I have a habit of kicking the mic.
And you talk too much with your hands. They're banging everything, my dear.
Yeah, we need to hang my microphone from the ceiling.
So anyway, I want to get back and sort of close off here.
Yeah, we probably should.
On the people's morning drives are not this long, or their drives home.
Or they're getting sick of hearing us.
So anyway, you should go and check it out. Back in the 1952 Washington UFO flap, people say, if they're here, why don't they fly over the White House? Well, the answer is they did.
Yeah, twice.
And they have radar data, but then you have this whole other group that comes in and says, oh, yeah, it was radar data, but these are the explainable things that are going on. Then you have personal witnesses. Witnesses with their own personal perspective who saw it firsthand. And for them, it's not a matter of belief. It's a matter of knowing. They don't believe what they saw. They know what they saw. And they carry that truth with them through their whole lives. And, this is an important story about the history of UFOs, UAPs. When people say, why didn't they just land on the White House lawn? Well, they didn't land that we know of, but they did fly over it. It's for everyone to see.
Right. And why should they behave the way you want them to?
Right. Yes. Perhaps they'll just behave in a merely alien manner, as you to
good
quote
idea.
you. Anyway,
they're out there. Ooh. Sorry, it's spooky.
That's right. Good note.
Yeah. So if you have a story.
Yes, if you have a story, please send it to, and the whole words, send it to spookycoop at gmail.com.
That's right. Send it to spookycoop at gmail.com.
And if you have a podcast and you want to share a shout out for each other back and forth, we'll do if I could speak English, reciprocal shout outs for your podcast for you.
We will shout you out twice.
Twice, that's right.
2 for the price of 1.
So everybody, thank you, audience, for tuning in today for this episode. We're very grateful for your patronage, and we hope you have a week, as always, of hope and wonder.
Yep.
So
See, I don't have a full brain.
Your brain needs to be rewired, madam.
If you can find it, please.
It's right here. I found it again.
It was on the floor. Stay safe and have fun.
Until next time,
when we see you in the Spooky Coop.